Yo, what's up? It's your boy One Shot Nas back here with another video. Today we're going to talk about my 1 year love-hate relationship with the Sony Fx30. It's officially been 1 year for me that I bought the camera starting, I think, May 3rd, May 2nd. I'll show the receipt in my video, but I bought this camera about a year ago and it's a love-hate relationship, but I say it's a lot more love than it is hate. So let's sit and talk about it. Some of the things, why I love it, why I like it, and should you buy it? All right, hold on. So again, the Sony Fx30, right? It's an amazing camera. I really love it. It's a couple caveats I have for the camera, but I've really been loving it since I've been owning it. And and it was something I wanted to own a long time ago. I'm gonna put the camera down because it just feels weird holding the camera, but it does feel like I'm doing something with my hands, which is like super awesome, and it makes me feel like I'm not outside and people can see me over my balcony. Hopefully y'all like the balcony look. I got the leading lines in the back, making it look good. I'm at 1.0 on the Canon M6 Mark II. But anyways, we're gonna talk about something super important on why I bought this camera, because it has been 1 year. All right, so the reason I bought this camera was because I was looking for a cinema camera or a professional camera that can take my videos up to the next level. I'm shooting on the Canon M6 Mark II right now. I really did learn a lot about that camera. It does have 8-bit, it doesn't have a good high dynamic range, and I really needed a camera that can do all those things. So I was actually super interested in buying the Sony Fx30 when it came out originally, but it was on back order for a really long time and I didn't get a chance to get it. So I really needed a new camera and I didn't have a lot of choices. So actually I went and bought the 6K Pro because the Fx30 was on back order so long. I'm really appreciative that I ended up getting the Fx30 as a B camera to the 6K Pro, because it's just been really great for me and my experience has been super awesome. My clientele is leveled up. Everything has just been leveled up. The 10-bit on this camera has been super awesome. I was a little spoiled with 12-bit RAW, with the 6K Pro. So I was kind of a little the Fx30 is a good camera, but it doesn't really beat that one. But I bought this camera because I needed something on a gimbal. I bought this camera because it was something I could do run and gun. I bought this camera so I can do social media content. So this camera was definitely a great buy, and I've been really appreciating this camera for the past year I've had it. I just really appreciate the image and how it's been looking for the past year, and it's been super awesome. I'll show you some footage on when I first had it, and then footage of now. And I'm really learning S-Log and really learning all these things. So it's really good. I think it does take about a year to really learn a camera. And it takes a little longer to do everything that is needed with this camera. So that's definitely one of the reasons why I bought it and why I've been keeping it so long and I haven't sold or anything, because you definitely need to sit down and learn for at least a year or two how to use your camera before you think about selling it or upgrade to the next camera. How this camera changed my business and my mindset, it changed my mindset because I was able to use more social media based clients. I was able to work with them a lot more. I was able to have a small camera that was able to do the things I needed for the social media basis. I was able to figure out that I can do live streaming. I was able to figure out that I can do, long events and have a price point like this to where you can buy multiple and do live events, and not spend a lot of money on the camera body and spend all your chips and put all your chips in one basket, but you're still able to buy, lights and other things necessary. Because I was able to buy some lights, not spending $5,000 on this one camera. I was able to buy things on the side to help me in my business. So that is kind of one of the things or trade-offs I have on buying really high-end equipment when you're not able to buy more equipment. And I'm doing the same thing right now. I want to buy some more equipment, but I also want to buy some more expensive cameras, but I'm like, hey man, let's just buy some new equipment that's going to help our business grow, spend money on marketing, things like that. So the Sony Fx30 has really changed my mind in the business value of how I charge my clients, what I do, how I come up to a job, the difference between the 6K and the Fx30, the different clients I need to talk to and different packages I have. So it's really been great. It's changed my mind in a way where I deal with the Sony fanboys a lot. And I'm getting a lot of backlash for just having Sony compared to me using Canon back in the day. Because Canon has great colors, but, when it comes to the features, which we're going to get into pros and the cons, you can't really beat Sony in a lot of stuff. So I've been getting a lot of, what side are you on type stuff. So it's changed my mind in a lot of ways. And I really appreciate this camera and the 1 year flow I've been rocking with. So, man, it's really been great in business and in life. So my experience with this camera has been super, and in both. It's been really great. I feel like I've been outgrowing it in the past couple months. I feel like I've seen some of the limitations of the camera, and I don't like to be limited, but it's really been a great experience. When I first got the camera, I was super excited. I didn't use my 6K Pro for about 6 months straight. I just picked this one up. It was so easy to do. It was so easy to use, you know, and I started getting to the more videographer stage, and I was getting hired as a videographer, you know, using gimbals and doing weddings. I never did weddings beforehand, and I started shooting weddings with this camera. Like, this camera has definitely changed my life in a lot of different ways, and I really appreciate that. And the experience has been super great in the business standpoint. In the lifestyle standpoint, it's been really good. I really don't use this camera for like creative things because of the limitations. I am a cinematographer, but I am also a videographer. So it's been in both with a lot of stuff. I really appreciate it though. I don't think with another camera, if I would have bought like the Lumix, or if I would have bought a Fuji X film, I don't think it'd have been as mind blowing or as changing to me as this camera has been, because definitely the Sony versus Canon versus everybody else thing has definitely changed my mind. It's opened me up to different experiences. It's put me in Facebook groups a lot more. I sit and talk to the Facebook groups, things like that. Like, it's really changed everything that I've done, because I was in the Black Magic group and I didn't talk, but now because I'm in the conversation for the Sony fanboy thing, like it's just opened my eyes to just how I view the world. And I would say my experience is also on the end part of that is kind of limiting, because the limitations of the camera have been changing my creative ideas. It has been not really helping my drive to do documentary as much. I also don't like the fact that, you know, when you want to buy Sony, you have to spend a lot of money. And that's something that's been really, you know, eating me alive right now. But that's been my experience towards the end of the fanboy thing. But at the beginning, I was straight Sony. Like, I was straight like, oh, Sony is the best. Sony is lit. You know, low light sucks, but who cares? Sony is just it. You know, like, where's the Sony fanboys at? Let me get more jobs, things like that. So my experience with the camera has been and in both, but it's been really awesome. And I really appreciate the purchase that I got. So I suggest that you get the camera for sure. This video is going to be a little long, so you guys are going to have to sit and listen. I'm going to give you like my actual journey from it. So yeah, hold on. So now we're going to talk about the pros and the cons. And in talking about my experience, I don't think you start seeing the pros or the cons of the camera until you start really working with the camera. I've worked this camera like a workhorse. I do weddings all the time. I did one yesterday. I did a job yesterday. I shot photography on this camera, like family wise. I haven't shot it professionally. But like, I've done so many things on this camera that I honestly say that I know the button layout. I know the ergonomics. I know the limitations of the ISO. I know what's needs to be done with the camera. Let's say limitations with the codecs. I haven't limited myself with the codecs or pushed the codecs for real, because, you know, the S is good, but people want to go SI and all that. I don't really do all that. I haven't used CF Express cards on the camera. I really don't need all that, because again, I know the limitations of the camera. I know what it's capable of. I'm actually having small itty bitty problems with the camera. But we're going to get into the pros and the cons of the camera, what some of the more pros are, some of what the most cons are. And like, we're going to value scale it, you know, to see if it's a good purchase for you. But in my journey, it's going to be super explained with these pros and these cons. You're going to find out there's a lot more pros than it is cons, and there's not a lot of cons to the pros. So the first super pro that I've like super survived through a lot of times is the ergonomics of the camera. I personally love the button layout. I think it's a cinema camera. I think it was definitely made video first. Like on your, hold on, let me show you. When you put your right hand on the camera, it's all the buttons sitting there ready for you to click. Like the record button, it's the record button in the front. It's your ISO. You got dials right there on the side. You got a whole bunch of stuff. So when you're shooting, you got like a whole bunch of just room to just shoot, like versus having to look in the back of the camera, you know, and just look all weird when you're shooting, you know, and having to do like this. And, you know, I don't have that problem with this camera. It doesn't have a lot of photography settings. It doesn't have a lot of layout. You have tally lights. You have all these different things on the body, ergonomics. It's a really great camera. And like, the best thing about the camera when it comes to ergonomics is the magnesium body. The magnesium body is just metal. Like, I've dropped this camera in front of a client. And when I dropped the camera in front of the client, my client mount was like, I was like, yeah, it's okay. I was a little worried more for the lens than I was for the camera. I'm talking about I dropped it full rigged out, just fell straight over, thought I put it on a tripod mount, and it just fell, hit the ground. And I actually just got a small scratch on the camera. I definitely do use a cage. This is the small rig cage, or the newer cage, something like that. But I definitely use a cage for the camera, so it had the cage on it. No, you know what? I didn't have a cage back then. I didn't have a cage because I didn't use the cages before because of the metal body and all the 1/4-inch mounts and all that. So that goes into the ergonomics. Like Sony really thought about it. The FX3 body is super awesome. The FX30 body is just the same thing, except with a small sensor. So I would feel super unappreciated if I bought a camera and it was plastic. The 6K Pro was a lot more plastic than the FX30, and I definitely trust the FX30 a lot more than the 6K Pro. Like, again, so the build quality of this camera is just like something out this world. I super duper appreciate that. I don't think anybody else should make a camera that does not have like magnesium alloy or whatever. I think that's what it is. I'm just saying that super huge word, but like it's amazing. I don't want to buy any plastic bodies, especially when I'm spending that much money on it. And that goes to the next point. The price level of this camera is like super awesome. It's $1,800 when you just get the body only with the XLR port. It is $2,200 retail, but you can buy this camera used for $1,600. I've seen a dude on Facebook who like put a wrap on the camera, and now he's like he can't sell it. So I think he's gonna probably drop the price to $1,250, and I might actually buy it from him at that price. And, you know, it's a really great beginner camera. It's super cheap. You can buy the Tamron 17 to 70, you know, at like $500. Like, it's a really price giving camera. That's like the best thing. I actually told my friend to send her a ZVE1 back because she's trying to do videography. And I told her to send that one back and get the FX30 with the Tamron lens. It was a lot more expensive, but I think ZVE1 is like $2,300, $2,400 with the kit lens and all that. But you can spend the same amount of money with the FX30 and get a great lens. And you can get, you know, a great body and some extra batteries for that same price. So like the price factor on this camera is like super amazing. I wouldn't trade that for the world. I'm not gonna lie. I think the only other camera I think the only other camera that's that cheap, used and retail, not even retail, is like the Lumix X5 2X. That's actually why I want to buy it, because it's a little cheaper than a lot of the other cameras. But man, like buying this and then buying the FX3 later, super great. Price point's amazing. We're gonna go to the next Pro. The next Pro, 4K at every frame, 4K 24, 4K 30, 4K 120, even though the 120 has a crop. I've never used 4K 120. I'm not a 120 shooter. I would love to get into sports, but that's a huge file. I just don't really use it, and it's a crop in it, which it would be great for video in a sports like football standpoint, but anything else, I wouldn't really use it. So that's like a super awesome thing. Then it does 4K DCI with the update, and then the next Pro is like the updates you get for the camera. It will get shutter angle. It will get some other things that's gonna make it super much more better. So super much more better. That's a word or a phrase. But the camera is like, you know, Sony based. It's gonna definitely have the firmware updates. So that's like a super awesome thing. Duh. I personally love this Pro. The Pro it's sharper and it looks better than the FX3. The FX3 is a more expensive camera. It's at $4,000 probably retail. But you can't not talk about this camera's 6K downsample image. It looks so much better. I love the sharpness. People talk about Sony sharpness. They talk about Sony's blacks and all that. But I actually love the sharpness of this camera. Like I love the A7 IV. The A7 IV is an amazing, and so is the FX30. So personally, I would buy the FX30's image over the FX3. The FX3 looks a little blotchy to me. It looks a little, you know, just 4K, not in a weird way, but like the oversampling makes it just a lot more detailed, which definitely does mess with the, you know, pixel count and all that. But this camera is a 33 megapixel or 26 megapixel sensor, so it's like super awesome versus the 12 megapixels you get from the FX3 and the A7 III. So the sharper image definitely does win for me. I personally love the sharper image. I'm just gonna move on to the next one. A super great Pro. The camera is an amazing photography camera. If you're outside and you're using really nice glass and you don't have to be inside, like it's a great camera for that. I definitely will show you some pictures of what I took with me and my wife recently. I'm on the Sigma 24 1.4, and I use that camera on the FX30 at 1.4. I took some amazing pictures. So it's a great photography camera. Even though it's not a hybrid camera, it is a cinema camera, but you can really use the camera for photography. It just does not have electronic shutter, so you won't get the noise or the mechanical shutter features or benefits. Only thing. Another thing, this camera is great in low light with very fast lenses, and there's a lot of lenses like cinema lenses that are cheap, and the cheaper lenses for this camera, like it's a Sony camera with a lot of third-party lenses you can get for a lot cheaper than regular glass or G Master lenses. You can still get G Master lenses, but like Sigma has great lenses. Tamron has great lenses. Rokinon has great lenses. Like, it's a lot of lenses. I'm not gonna name everybody. You know, Zeiss. There's a lot of great lenses that you can buy with the Sony Fx30 at a really cheap price. I suggest Tamron and Sigma because I use those lenses and they're super amazing for all around versatility, and they're cheap. So, and you can get them used cheap. So I will grab those. And the Sony Fx30 does come with a top handle. So these are most of my pros. It comes with a top handle. You see what I'm saying? That's a lot of stuff you get in for a very cheap camera with APS-C, which is great. APS-C is still great. That's very much industry standard. I can't talk right now, but I would grab this camera for all of those great pros. We're going to talk about the cons for a second. Now, the cons for a second don't outweigh the pros, but they are cons. They are limitations of the camera. So let's get into it. The two biggest things, I'm going to try to not talk about it too much. The biggest thing for me is the terrible low light that this camera has. The dual native ISO is at 800 and 2500. The highest ISO is very small. Like, I don't like how it's 2500, but it is a crop sensor, you know, camera. It does do very well in very bright situations, but when you get into a no light situation, the shadows are terrible. And that gets into the second point. The noise reduction on this camera cannot be turned off, which makes the image a lot more noisier. Then I know if you use a speed booster, it just makes the image more noisier. Then the image just get punched in a lot, and like even when you use a speed booster, because that would have been a pro, but if you use a speed booster, it's gonna crop into 4.7K. And that's already a crop on top of a crop sensor. Who wants to buy a speed booster just to be at Super 35 again? So yeah, it like the speed booster would have been a pro, but it really can't be a pro for that. Definitely the two cons are super huge. Like, the low light is very terrible. I've been in situations where I've been really mad about the low light. I've also been in situations where I've had lights and like the stuff doesn't bother me. So it's like, it just depends. When you're in no light, the shadows lift a lot. So that's where a lot of grain comes in. But if you're in a low light situation with lights in it that aren't bright enough to hit the sensor, that's a different story. Like, I'll try to give you an explanation or examples of that, because I was doing a birthday party one time in a really nice lounge, and there were lights, but they weren't bright enough to lighten the sensor. So I just brought the ISO up to about 2500, 3000, or 3500, or whatever the number, 3200. And it was super clean still. You know, it was noise, but it wasn't as much. But I've been in a concert or anything like that, and I brought the ISO up the same amount, and it just wasn't super clean in the blacks. The blacks lift a lot, which makes it super grainy, super blotchy, and I kind of hate that personally myself. So that's kind of why I be wanting to sell the camera all the goddamn time, or just look at it like, man, this is just not the FX3, because FX3 is definitely the low light king of everything. So, you know, that's something that pisses me off. Another con, you know, people don't like to talk about it. You know, APS-C is just industry standard. It is. Super 35 is industry standard, but it's a crop sensor camera. That's a con. It's not a full frame camera. You can definitely go benefits versus cons, but it's not a full frame camera, so you don't get the full frame look. You don't get the full frame light get in, which is the bad thing, limitations about this camera. So I've never had a full frame camera. I've always had crop sensor cameras, but I would love a full frame camera just to see the difference between that and this. The FX6, FX3 are definitely better looking in the shallow depth of field thing than the crop sensor camera, but I won't spend too much time on that one because definitely it is industry standard, but you know, it is what it is on that part. Two last things that are cons. Remember, we went through a lot of pros, but we're going to the two last things. In photography, there's no mechanical shutter, so you can't use this camera like a photography camera. No matter if it doesn't have EVF or not, you don't need EVF for photography. I don't care what nobody says. But the FX3 does have a mechanical shutter when you take pictures, so you definitely can't use that camera as a photography camera. This camera only has single burst, and it only has an electronic shutter. But again, the mechanical shutter is not there. The electronic shutter, as soon as you go inside, if you're at the flicker thing, it does have an anti-variable flicker shutter thing, but who has time to do that? I would like to shoot at 1000 shutter speed and not have banding in my images, but that's a problem because it has electronic shutter in the photography mode, and it's only a single burst. I was gonna try to use it the other day, but I actually had to use the Canon M6 Mark II, which I'm shooting on, because it has 14 frames per second in RAW. So I was like, nah, let me use that, because I had to do something like high-paced things, even though it wasn't like moving objects too much. It was some children doing a recital, but I like to let that bad boy rip Can't do that with this camera. You just got to let it go one at a time, which is good if you're doing portraits outside. But if you're not doing portraits outside, you're kind of in a caveat and in a bust. So that's kind of a bad thing for this camera that I wish it really had, because I would really love to use it in a hybrid standpoint, but it is a cinema camera. Last but certainly not least, which I really don't care or use too much, it does have a problem with rolling shutter, but it is better than a lot of other cameras. So I won't talk about it too much. I actually don't whip pan or do anything like that. I do sports, but I don't think anybody in the fighting community sees that too much. Maybe in the football stuff, you know, I'll drop some YouTubers in the bottom that'll show you the rolling shutter problem. But to me, it's not that big of a deal. I don't use it too much, you know, so. Okay, we went through the pros and the cons. We talked about my journey. We talked about my experience and why I bought it. Now, would I recommend this camera to a beginner? I've already done it, to be honest. I did it last week. I did it week before that. I recommend this camera to so many people because it is a very cheap camera and it is a very capable camera. A lot of stuff that you get in it is super awesome, like the dual card slots, the magnesium body, crop sensor with crop sensor lenses, like super oversampled images. Like, it's just super awesome. So I would recommend this camera to anybody trying to do live streaming, you know, AV, videography, you know, like anything in that nature, because it's a great camera. It's a great starter camera, beginner camera, and a great camera that you can upgrade to the next one and still have this camera. You don't need to sell it. I bought a camera that was like not hybrid, and I had to kind of leave it alone and make it just my vlog camera or just my YouTube camera, because it doesn't do a lot of stuff I needed to do. It's more photography based, which it's bad and good. But this cam, I ain't gonna lie, you're gonna be good with a whole bunch of, you know, lenses on the side with a lot of extra bread instead of spending $6,000 for a camera that's really gonna get outdated. This camera's not gonna get outdated. They can live stream, they can do all this stuff. So I recommend this camera 100% to anybody looking to get into video, anybody looking to upgrade their portfolio, to deal with 10-bit, to deal with high codecs, to deal with 4K. I recommend this camera. It definitely has small file sizes too. So anybody in the beginner standpoint, get this camera, don't regret it, have fun, and keep shooting. My conclusion on the day is I was super happy about my purchase. I'm happy about it today. I don't regret it. I think that it's an awesome camera. I was definitely a beginner. I'm definitely a beginner still. I'm gonna stay with the beginner idea. I have people tell me my images are amazing. I don't feel that way, but this camera is super awesome. I'm gonna put you some examples in here for you to see. Like, it's not a lot of cons in it. I agree that everybody should buy a camera that does great for what they need it to be done at, and that helps their business, and that is this camera. It will help your business. It will add on to a kit, and people will buy you for it. They will buy the camera that it's packed up. So, you know, you can be an A, B, C, or D camera. So it's a great camera. It does live streaming. There's a lot of stuff. So I recommend this camera, and I had a great purchase, and I have a great 1 year with this camera, and I really appreciate the time that I spent with the camera. I'm not going to sell it. So I'm going to spend more time with it. And I'll do a 2-year review or a 1.5 review, technically 1.6. I'll do a 1.6 review and show you guys that the camera is still being used, and it is my workhorse of a camera that I use day to day, in and out, and it's not going to change. All right. So you guys stay tuned to more videos. I appreciate you for watching the whole video. Anybody that stayed this long, like, comment, subscribe, continuously watch my videos. I really appreciate it. I don't have that many subscribers, so I definitely appreciate the whole watch through, and I appreciate your opinion on my comments. So please drop a comment down below. I want to hear what you say about the FX30, the FX3, the A7 IV. Just let me know what you think in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe for your boy One Shot Nas. Shout out to you. Shout out to your mom. Make sure you tell her you love her. Make sure you tell your dad you appreciate him, and your little brothers and sisters, or your older brothers and sisters. Tell everybody you love them. Kiss your wife, hug your daughters, hug your sons. Continue to do what you're doing, and keep working. All right, smiles. Appreciate it, guys. It's your boy One Shot Nas. Peace.